hardly tell.
Committee will come to order. At the conclusion of opening statements yesterday, the chair called up H.R. 5859, and the bill was open for amendment at any point. At this point, though, I want to remember a fellow by the name of Norm Lent, who served on this committee for a good number of years. He served in the Congress for 20 years. He was the ranking Republican on the committee when I first came to the committee in 1991. He has a long record of working in a bipartisan way. He drafted and handled floor debate for the Republican minority on some of the most sweeping environmental, energy, telecommunications, and transportation legislation enacted during his tenure. These included the Clean Air Act amendments of 1990, the National Energy Policy Act of 92, the Cable TV Act, legislation ending the 1992 National Rail Strike, Superfund Act, RCRA, Resource Conservation and Recovery Act, Toxic Substances Control Act, the Conrail Privatization Act, and the Insider Trading and Securities Fraud Enforcement Act, just to name a few. His memorial service is this morning. I know I and a couple of other members will be going to that service, but I thought that we would have a moment of silence in remembrance of Norm Lent. Shh. Thank you. As I said, we've called up H.R. 5859. Are there any amendments, bipartisan amendments to the bill? Bipartisan amendment? Gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Butterfield.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do have an amendment at the desk.
The clerk will report the title of the amendment.
Amendment to H.R. 5859, offered by Mr. Butterfield of North Carolina.
And the amendment will be considered as read. It will be distributed by the staff, and the gentleman from North Carolina is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I offered and withdrew a similar amendment at the Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade Subcommittee markup. The bill's sponsor, my good colleague and friend, Mr. Harper, pledged to work with me to develop a consensus language that would be acceptable to members on both sides of the aisle. And I want to thank him and Chairman Bono Mack and you, Mr. Chairman, for your efforts. As I said at the subcommittee markup, I am not opposed to ending the current mandate that requires auto dealers to make insurance cost pamphlets available to consumers. But I do not think we should repeal this mandate without studying the issue of how to provide some very useful information. My amendment will require NHTSA to thoroughly re-examine the issue of how best to inform prospective buyers about damage susceptibility. We have heard from the auto dealers that this information is not being requested by potential buyers, but that's largely because the consumer doesn't know the information even exists. My amendment solicits public comment, which will allow all interests to be heard and incorporated into NHTSA's report to Congress. The report will inform Congress on the most useful data, format, and method for providing simple and understandable damage susceptibility information to consumers. NHTSA would evaluate whether insurance costs are the best measure of damage susceptibility or whether there's a better way to make comparisons between vehicles. NHTSA would have 2 years to conduct the review. The purpose of the provision that H.R. 5859 repeals is to give consumers a basis for comparing damageability risk at the point of sale. Whether you think the current requirement is a nuisance for auto dealers or you think that NHTSA has missed the mark in its implementation of the mandate, I think we should accept that consumers continue to have a legitimate interest in minimizing the costs associated with minor collisions. As I said last week, information is power. If consumers had this information, perhaps we would see market forces incentivizing manufacturers to produce cars which are less susceptible to damage. It is my understanding that this amendment will be accepted, and I again would like to reiterate my appreciation for all of you. Thank you very much. I yield back.
Thank you, Mr. Butterfield. And for what purpose does the gentleman from Mississippi seek recognition?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to speak on behalf of the Butterfield Amendment, and I'd like to thank the ranking member for working with staff and stakeholders to find a compromise that's acceptable to everyone. My concern remains that this information could be potentially misleading and mislead consumers into thinking that a vehicle with a high damage susceptibility rating means a high damage susceptibility for occupants. So I thank the gentleman for agreeing to report language that makes clear the phrase most useful data, format, and method does not prevent NHTSA from concluding that there is no useful data, format, or method, as the case may be. And with that, I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman yields back. Is there a further discussion on Mr. Butterfield's amendment? If there's no further discussion, the vote will occur on the amendment. All those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The nays have it. The ayes have it, and the amendment. I literally was looking at the script here. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there further amendments to this bill? The question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 5859 as amendment by the House. All those in favor say aye. 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 Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Chair now calls up H.R. 5865 as amendment by the subcommittee and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 5865, as amended by the Subcommittee on Commerce, Manufacturing, and Trade, to promote the growth and competitiveness of American manufacturing.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. So ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Are there other amendments to the bill? No amendments, so the question now occurs on favorably reporting H.R. 5865 as amended to the House. All those in favor would say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Chair calls up H.R. 4273 and asks the clerk to report.
H.R. 4273, to clarify that compliance with an emergency order under Section 202C of the Federal Power Act may not be considered a violation of any federal, state, or local environmental law or regulation and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with, and the chair would recognize Mr. Olson to offer an amendment, and the clerk will report the amendment and distribute it to the members.
Amendment in the nature of a substitute to H.R. 4273 offered by Mr. Olson of Texas.
Mr. Chairman, I thank you for calling this markup on H.R. 4273, which was favorably reported out of the Subcommittee on Energy and Power, with a commitment from both sides that we would continue to work in good faith to reach an agreement on how to best address environmental concerns while simultaneously protecting the grid against reliability emergency. We've come to that agreement, and I'm pleased to offer an amendment in the nature of a substitute reflecting this agreement, along with my colleagues Mr. Green and Mr. Doyle. This amendment was truly a compromise, and while the process wasn't easy, especially given some of the ideological differences of opinion, I'm proud to report that to this committee and the constituents I represent back home, that we were able to find middle ground on this important matter. Maintaining grid reliability is not a partisan issue. Everyone can agree that blackouts pose a significantly higher risk to public health than the temporary violation of an environmental permit. Hospitals, schools, businesses, and public services like water, sewer, and transit systems rely on a steady flow of electricity. Without it, there is chaos. We cannot place an electricity generator in the untenable position of having to choose whether to abide by an emergency order to prevent a blackout or violate an environmental permit. Doing so would jeopardize the reliability of our electric grid and erode Americans' confidence in their government. The amendment that my colleagues and I offer today makes clear that compliance with an emergency order shall not be considered a violation of any federal, state, or local environmental laws, while also directing the Department of Energy to consult with the appropriate environmental regulator to ensure that the impacts are minimized. This amendment does not substantially change the original language or intent of the bill. It would simply add a new section directing DOE to consult with other agencies to consider ways to reduce the likelihood of violating an environmental permit. This is already DOE's standard practice. I believe that balancing environmental concerns is important. However, DOE's directive must take precedent in an emergency. This amendment ensures just that by clarifying that DOE has the explicit authority to make the reliability determination. And so while we can receive input from the environmental regulator, DOE retains the authority to grant final approval to ensure the emergency doesn't result in a blackout. Mr. Chairman, this is a fair approach and one that I encourage my colleagues to support. With this amendment, H.R. 4273 will improve Section 202 of the Federal Power Act so that it protects consumers, the environment, and those who provide power. With that, I'd be happy to yield any additional time I have to those who wish to speak in support of this amendment.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to first of all thank Mr. Olson and Mr. Green and congratulate them for all their hard work. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to thank you and our ranking member, Mr. Waxman, too. Both of your efforts were critical to us being able to put a piece of legislation together that both sides should support. This is in the finest tradition of the Energy and Commerce Committee, where we work together and find ways to do things in a bipartisan fashion as much as possible. And I know it's been rare lately, but this was a real true effort of both sides giving some ground, but maintaining the basic principle of the legislation that we were trying to do. So I just want to thank my ranking member and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for all your help in putting the legislation together. And I'll yield back.
I thank my colleague from Pennsylvania for those kind remarks. This truly was a bipartisan effort. Anyone seeking time speaking?
Mr. Chairman,
Green?
Mr. Gentleman, yield.
I yield my
For
colleague.
what purpose does the gentleman from Texas seek recognition?
Just to make a comment, I'm going to thank both my neighbor, Congressman Olson, but also Mike Doyle, and I think a lot of us got involved on this bill, and it's a really good compromise to make sure that reliability issues are important. And again, Ranking Member Waxman, we have where EPA has empowered, but not to make the final decision. The Department of Energy will make that. And but I appreciate the effort to work it out, and where we, like my colleague from Pennsylvania said, we don't do this near enough, and hopefully we'll continue it. But thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Olson, would you yield to me?
Yes, sir, I would yield.
Thank you for yielding to me. I had real problems with the original bill, but I think the compromise is a very good one. I want to commend Mr. Doyle, Mr. Green for their commitment to this issue, and Mr. Dingell for developing a key compromise when discussions seemed at a dead end. And I want to thank Chairman Upton and you, Mr. Olson, for working with us to develop a solution that we can all accept. Urge support for the bill.
I thank the ranking member from California for those comments and yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman's time has expired. Is there further discussion on the amendment? Are there any other amendments? If not, all those in favor shall signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it, and the amendment is agreed to. Are there further amendments at this time? The question now would occur on favorably reporting H.R. 4273 as amended to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. Chair now would call up H.R. 5892 and ask the clerk to report.
H.R. 5892, to improve hydropower and for other purposes.
Without objection, the first reading of the bill is dispensed with. So ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the bill? Are there any amendments to the bill? The question now occurs on favorably.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Yes, the gentlelady is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. As one of the chief sponsors of this bill, I just want to thank you and Representative McMorris Rogers for working with us on H.R. 5892, the Hydropower Regulatory Efficiency Act. We've been working on this bill since December, and what it does is it puts together a new path towards smarter, more efficient hydropower project permitting. It's bipartisan, like all the legislation today, and what it does is it expands renewable and affordable hydropower across the country, especially in Colorado, Washington State, and other states. And I just want to thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Chairman Upton, Ranking Member Waxman, as well as the original co-sponsors, Mr. Latta, Mr. Markey, Mr. Lamar Smith, Mr. Matheson, and Mr. Terry, and Mr. Dingell. When you can get that group together, Mr. Chairman, you know you've got a good bill. And so I just want to thank everybody for this. And in addition, American Rivers, the National Hydropower Association, and the Colorado Small Hydro Association. I hope the lessons we learned from this process can be applied to other serious issues before this committee, and that we can find similar success to the benefit of the American people and to our nation's energy future. And with that, Mr. Chairman, unless somebody else wants to say something, I'll yield back.
Well, thank you, Ms. DeGatte.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Is there further discussion? Seeing none, the question would now occur on favorably reporting H.R. 5892 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the bill is favorably reported. The chair would now call up H.Con.Res Resolution 127 and ask the clerk to report.
H.Con.Res127, expressing the sense of Congress regarding actions to preserve and advance the multi-stakeholder governance model under which the Internet has thrived.
Without objection, the first reading of the resolution is dispensed with. So ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the resolution? Are there any other amendments to the resolution? Seeing none, the question would now occur on favorably reporting H.Con Resolution 127 to the House. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the resolution is favorably reported. The chair will now call up the activity report and ask the clerk to report.
Activity report of the Committee on Energy and Commerce, U.S. House of Representatives through May 31st, 2012.
Without objection, the first reading of the activity report is dispensed with. So ordered. Are there any bipartisan amendments to the report? Are there any amendments to the report? The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Waxman.
I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman's recognized.
I would like to comment on the pending semi-annual activity report. Last year, we had very strong differences regarding the content of this report. Democrats expressed significant frustration about the committee's record and the overwhelmingly partisan measures that went from here to the House floor. We offered a number of amendments to highlight these different disagreements. Although we still have strong differences on a number of important policy issues, we will not be offering any amendments to the activity report this year. We do have concerns about some of the descriptions in the activities report, particularly with regard to the sections regarding energy and environmental issues. We are hopeful that we can resolve these concerns cooperatively at the staff level. I'd like to thank Chairman Upton for agreeing to work cooperatively with us to address outstanding issues in this report, and I would ask that the minority be given the requisite number of days to file additional views if necessary.
Without objection, and
Yield back.
thanks, Mr. Waxman, for those comments, and I'm delighted that we were able to work together on all of these bills and on this activity report. If there are no other amendments to the activity report, and does anyone seek recognition to make any other comments? Seeing none, the question would now occur on favorably reporting the activity report to the House. All those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it, and the activity report is favorably reported. Without objection, staff is authorized to make technical and conforming changes to the bills, resolution, and report approved by the committee today. So ordered. Chair would like to thank all members and staff and for the bipartisan cooperation that worked on all of these bills. I think we reported out good products that will benefit the American people. And without objection, the committee will stand adjourned.